Okay, hiring your first employee and HR risks. Remember, when you start with no employees. It's just you. You're doing 100% of the work. You're doing everything yourself. You're learning as you're going. And eventually, you're going to say to yourself, you know what? I need to hire someone. And you look at it from a value standpoint. When you're doing everything yourself and you're doing things that someone can do for a lower wage or what have you, then your opportunity is you go grow your business. So when you get to the point of getting an employee, then you got to think to yourself, what can that employee do for me and what opportunity will that open up for me? So before you hire your first person, this is a whole new world of legal and law and personnel and HR and liability. You're opening up a huge door. Let's start with hiring an employee versus hiring a contractor, okay? Contractor is pretty much a way that you can bring someone on, kind of test the waters with them before you actually hire them on. There are a lot of laws that govern that as well. What is considered a contractor? What's considered an employee? There's very clear distinction between an employee and a contractor. You have to decide which one is best for your business and which avenue you want to pursue, but you have to make sure you do it the proper way and the legal way, because if you make mistakes here, this is when the IRS comes sees you. There's huge fines for this. They think there's some mischievous behavior where you're not trying to pay taxes because you're trying to use someone as a contractor. So it's very, very clear. You have to get involved with a tax professional. Go to the IRS website. There's a 20-point checklist. You got to get a contractor and you have to have an agreement with them. What services are they going to provide? How are you going to compensate them? It has to be very, very clear what you're going to do with this contractor in order for them to qualify as a contractor. Now, there's some real advantages to starting out with a contractor. I like to say you can put your toe in the water with the potential permanent employee. And for you as the entrepreneur, you don't have to pay any taxes on their income. It's a straight write-off. You don't have to pay their Medicare, unemployment insurance, workman's comp, benefits. You are basically paying for a service. It's almost like someone coming in and fixing your air conditioning. They are going to provide a service to you for a specified period of time, and you compensate that for that. You're going to have to go through the administration of that. Make sure the contract is clear. Make sure it is all legal. You're probably going to need to consult with someone a little more versed in this, but remember, you can't just bring people in and say, okay, I'm going to make that one a contractor, I'll make this one an employee, I'm going to do this. There's not a lot of gray area here. It's very black and white. What qualifies as a contractor, and you make sure you do that, and what qualifies when you have to bring them on as an employee. So you really have to think about all the other benefits and all the other things you have to provide. Another thing is, for an employee, you're not going to have to lure them in, but you're going to have to help them decide they want to come work with you. You might have to do a 401k right away. You're going to need all these other benefits that most people are used to when they go to bigger companies. You're going to have to consider all that, administering the 401k. We have a separate company that does the 401k administering. The paperwork's like this to make sure it's all legal and it's done right. So there's a lot more to it than saying, I'm just going to start a 401k or I'm going to give health insurance out and so forth. There's a lot to it, and you really need to sit down and evaluate that, either with a tax professional or an IRS professional or a benefits professional. Really do your homework before you start hiring or putting contractors in, because you want to make sure you do it legally, properly, and it protects both of you. And that's what you really want in the long run. You want both people protected, you as the entrepreneur, and you want your contractor protected as well. Before you start interviewing, you need to know the laws. You need to understand there's a bunch of questions that you are not allowed to ask against discrimination and so forth. The legal questions would be age, citizenship, criminal record, you're on disability, what's your family like, are you married, are you in the military, what's your national origin, your race, your skin color, your status, your sex, residence, all this everything. There's a whole list of things you cannot ask. It's illegal to ask. The potential employee is protected by law. So you need to be very, very smart in how you interview people and how you can get to the point where you want to know if you want this person to be part of your company. The cost of lawsuits and workman's comp is unbelievable, folks. You really got to start looking at that, and what does it truly cost to have an employee? And if you have an employee that's working like in a manufacturing facility, or something called LLR, loaded labor rate, which is you take an hourly rate or whatever their wage is, and you add a significant percentage to that, because that's what that employee really costs you. All loaded labor rates are different depending on what you're doing and what it is, but it's not just $10 an hour. It's generally even 30-40% more than that. When you hire your first employee, they become half the company. That's the only way to look at it. There's two of you, that other person is half. Even though you may be doing more work or whatever, you hire another employee, now they're a third of the company. You have to realize that you are letting go of control of something you had 100% control of. And are these two people capable of getting the job done, making your customers happy, doing what you would do so you can now concentrate on more beneficial things, which is growing the business, making your product better, and so forth. What if you hire a salesperson? Let's just say I want to more work on product development, and we talked about it takes 10 sales calls to get an order, your cost of acquisition of a customer. What if your salesperson says, I don't do 5 calls, that'll never work, they won't buy, they're with the other person or whatever. Before you know it, you have a salesperson that's not doing the job that you do, and all of a sudden your sales aren't going to rise, but yet you added all this cost to bring this salesperson on, paying for their travel, their hotels, their phones, their cars, whatever it is. It's an enormous expense, and if they're not doing it the way you do it, then you're going to find yourself at a loss. Customer service people. Generally, the entrepreneur is the best customer service person around because we have it all on the line. It's our paycheck. Every time that phone rings, it's a paycheck or it's not, right? So that's how we approach it. Sometimes we bring customer service in, they got to be there at 8, and they can't wait to leave till 5, and I want my hour lunch, and I don't care. The phones are ringing. Remember, it's critical to understand when you're hiring that first employee, what are they going to do for you? If you're going to put them into collections, are they going to treat your customer nice? Do they know how collections impact cash flow and how critical cash flow is when you're an employee number 1, number 2, or number 3 time of your career? If you have them involved in shipping, what if they ship the wrong locations? What if they ship the wrong product? What if they don't understand quality issues? If they don't understand the finance of shipping the wrong stuff? All these things come into play, and you have to realize that you know all this in your heart because you've been doing it since day one. You're bringing someone else in. Hopefully they care as much as you, but it's very, very rare that you'll get employees that care as much as you do. So they may just say, oh yeah, I'll refund that, or they won't find out what's going wrong, or if it's a mass problem or it's a singular problem. Right? All these things you got to make sure you instill in your employees. It's critical that you hire the right people. Well, let's look at some strategies to hire people. 1, treat it like it's an investment. I always say hire slow, fire quick. Take your time hiring. Don't just say, oh, this person can do the job, or oh, I'll mold that person. Make sure you have the right person. You're better off taking more time than hiring someone and hoping they work. Actively recruit. Talk to headhunters, anybody you can find out there, industry people. Actively recruit people that are looking, because a lot of times the good people are already working and they're not going to be they're not looking online or whatever it is. And the other thing you got to remember is when you're hiring your first couple employees, you're going to have to sell them. You take someone who's a really good employee and they're maybe in a stable work environment, you want them to come on and be employee number 1 or 2, and you recognize their skill sets, you have to put on your sales cap. You have to tell them, here's where I'm going, here's my vision, here's what it can be, here's what I can do for you. Start with me now, and in the future this is going to pay off. Those are types of things you got to think about. How are you going to sell the employee to come work for you? Because coming to work for an entrepreneur in the early stages is very, very risky, and some people are risk adverse. They don't like that. Tip number 4, be thorough, check referrals. Now don't get referrals from friends, neighbors, buddies. Those referrals are meaningless. You want their old boss. Somehow you can get a hold of them. If they're working at a job, then you go to their last company and find out who their old boss is and talk to their old boss. Those are the best referrals, or their old bosses, people they've worked with, people that are superior to them that they worked for. Everyone's got buddies at work. Everybody puts down someone. What do you think they're going to say? Oh, they're miserable? They're going to say, oh, they're great. Yeah, they do a wonderful job. They're trying to help their buddy get a job. I would do the same thing. I would say, hey, my buddy, oh, he'd be great, right? You want someone that has interacted with this person. Do a cross-functional interview, right? If you're the only employee and you're hiring employee number 1, have the neighbor interview them. Have your spouse interview them. Have someone else. Make sure you get a cross-functional team to look at that. Try to find people with different skill sets that can probe and learn if that employee is capable of doing what you want them to do. Tip 6 is a final interview. Get someone with no skin in the game. Someone that you know neutrally and so forth, and let them just evaluate the person. Because remember, the personality is really the most important. You can teach skills, you can't teach personality. I'm a big believer in that. You get the right person with the right personality and the right attitude and their willingness to learn and willingness to do the job, you can teach them the skills. Everybody can learn skills. You can't teach people to have a good personality. It just doesn't happen. The other thing is, don't hire below your expectations. Bad that hire cost, 25, 50 grand, could be more. And the other thing I learned in my hiring in my company is anytime someone comes in at a bargain, there's no bargain. Right? If you sit there and say, oh, this person, I can save X amount of dollars by hiring this person, they're cheaper, right? Generally, people are paid what they're worth, and they're cheaper for a reason. I've learned this the hard way. Sometimes I had two candidates. This person's better, but this one's cheaper. I went with the cheaper one. 100% of the time, I made the wrong decision. It's just me. It's my advice to you is if you get the right fit and that person costs, say, $5,000 more a year or $2,000 or whatever the number happens to be, they are most likely worth it. And they most likely can make up that money to you times 5. So really, really thoroughly evaluate what you're going to pay the person versus what value they bring. A few more thoughts before we finish. Even when you had the right person, things can still go wrong. Even if you have the ideal candidate, things happen. An employee takes a vacation. They get sick. They could have family issues. They could be drinking and you don't know that. They may harass a customer. They may harass another employee when you get to 3 or 4. They might just walk out and quit. They argue with coworkers, right? You thought they were great, but now they try to find fault in everybody else because they're trying to make themselves look good. They could pass away. I mean, there's tragic things that happen. The issues are endless when you hire people. So it's not just they walk in, they do a great job, everyone's wonderful, you're growing like crazy. That's not the real world. That's not realistic of what you can expect when you hire employees. Employees have their own interest at heart first, which they should. They want to take care of their family, they want to travel, they got hobbies, whatever it is. That's their first interest. Sometimes at 5:01, they forgot they even worked at the place and they're going to somewhere else. So you remember, you gotta understand, you gotta try to get the best out of your employees, treat them well, and hopefully you have a nice reciprocal relationship. You have to understand that anything can happen with employees. I've had a lot of employees over there just shocked by the things that you end up dealing with. You need to be calm constantly. Employees come in and they're upset and something went wrong, someone said something, sit down, relax, work it through it, and be prepared to do this for the rest of your career because it's going to happen. When you're the one at the top and people are having problems, they don't feel like they're getting satisfaction, they will come to you and you'll have to sit down and make sure everybody's happy. So hiring your first employee is much more than just getting someone to pay bills or whatever. You got to think of them as 50% of the company. You really do. You have to say, when I'm out, this person's in charge. Are they the right person? Don't go after bargain people. Don't go after people that are, I'll work for this, because they're trying to get a job, whatever. Make sure you have the right skill set. This person is one of the most critical hires you ever have. Think about it. If you have 50 employees and you hire 51, they're 2% of the company, right? If you're an employee and you're hiring 2 and 3, they go from 50% to 33% of the company to 25% for your 4th employee. That's how important it is. You have to sit down and thoroughly evaluate people before you bring them on. You maybe start them as a contractor at the beginning. It's a little less risky, and then bring them on full time if they work out well. So remember, employees are just like you. All companies are full of employees, right? There's no difference between any company. We all have employees. We're all selling something. So remember, the employees are the blood of the company. You have to take your time when you're hiring them. Thank you. Okay, quick story about starting out and hiring employees. When I started hiring employees, I placed an ad and I expected a lot of resumes, which I did. Internet wasn't real prevalent at this time, but so when I started interviewing people, I started realizing fairly quickly they become disinterested because they're going to be employee 3 or employee 4 or what have you, and they weren't real sure they wanted to take the risk, right? So here I thought I had this great job or a growing company, you can be part of a startup and so forth. That intrigues some people, but most people it doesn't intrigue. Most people want the steady paycheck, they want their benefits, they want the 401k, they might have 3 weeks vacation already. So when they came into my little 600 square foot office at this time, I found that the more qualified candidates would shy away, wouldn't follow up. I would try to get back with them. They were just not interested. When I finally did find some candidates that I actually went into sales mode and I went to sell them on this position and sell them on the opportunity. And I actually showed my P&L for the previous year to a candidate to let them know, hey, I am profitable and I can afford your salary and there's going to be a lot of upside here and so forth. So I think that's something to understand. When you're early on, you need to not lure talent talent, but you want to find a way to get talent to come to you, and you're going to have to sell them. I always say when you're an entrepreneur, you sell everybody. You sell your suppliers, you sell the bank, you sell potential employees. You kind of want to think, I'm the boss and I run, and people want to come work for me. It doesn't work that way early on. You have to sell them. You have to get them to see the vision that you see that there's going to be an upside for them down the road. See that, hey, listen, if we hit these levels of sales or gross revenue or whatever you want to do, and they get some bonuses on it. They're helping you grow the business. So really you have to sit down and put together a plan. Not only a wonderful ad that attracts their attention. Hopefully you have a good website by now, because you need a website. But remember, you're going to have to sell the potential employee to come work for you. It's very, very important. Otherwise, you're not going to get the good talent, right? You get someone that might take any job, or someone, oh, I'll try it. I don't care. I got nothing else going on anyway. If you want that critical, they're going to be 25% of the company if they're employee number 4. You have to put on your sales hat. Yet once again, put your sales hat's on 100% of the day. That's all there is to it when you're starting out. You're selling everybody. You're selling to try to get credit terms. You're selling everything. But it's really critical if you want a really good employee. I opened up my books. I just sat there and showed them the P&L. I showed them the balance sheet. I showed them my sales. I was a complete open book, and that's how I got this person to come join my organization. So remember, it's not a matter of just placing an ad and all these resumes are going to come at you and you get to pick and choose who you want. The person that's going to come to you is going to have to be willing to take a risk, and you have to try to mitigate that risk. You hear that throughout boot camp. Mitigate the risk for that employee so they feel comfortable coming to you. There's a foundation, and you might get an employee that loves startups, right? And they get a little more into it and so forth. And if you can get that person motivated and understand there's some stability, as stable as you can be in your first few years, and there's great opportunity if it hits, then that's a great motivation to bring in good talent. So remember, think about that when you're hiring your talent. You got to put your sales hat on, and you'll have your sales hat on 24/7 anyway. Thank you.